In 24 hours, we had a synagogue set alight with children inside, and we had a restaurant, an Israeli restaurant, attacked by a violent, abusive mob. And we're seeing all the repeated rhetoric of, this is not the Australia I know, we don't tolerate this, etc., etc. The Prime Minister is saying what he says, the Premier is saying what she says, but can we just call complete bullshit on this? I think enough of pretending like it matters, or like all the things they're not saying or all the things they've said before now suddenly don't matter. The culture of any nation, any business, any organization, any educational facility is set from the top down. What is accepted is determined by actions, not by weak words. So when you look at all the things that have happened in Australia since October 7, and you count how many people have actually paid a price for hate speech, for incitement to violence, and for violence, you tell me whether or not that is a deterrent to the people who acted over this 24-hour period in Melbourne. Whether or not they've looked at everything else horrific that's happened in Australia and thought, actually, it's probably not worth doing it because the people who were violent prior to me were punished. They're sitting in jail. They've paid a price. Well, most of them haven't. The vast majority haven't. So we as a nation have determined that this behaviour is fine. And people will argue and say, oh, but every society has extremists and idiots and violent people and scumbags. And of course they do. Absolutely. The Australia I have known for 41 years has always had an extremist element. Of course, there's always violent idiots. We get that. You know what the difference now is? Back then, the vast majority of Australians would not tolerate it. They would not condone it. They would come out very staunchly in support of the victims of any violent crime, and they would be adamant that the person who has acted in a violent way, the evil, was wrong. Not anymore. That's the difference here. Not that there are idiots who are going to set a synagogue on fire or barge into a restaurant in a violent, terrifying manner. It's the reaction of everyday people. You read through comments on articles about it on social media, and not that we use social media as a gauge, but I mean, what else do we use? Everyone's on it. And almost every single comment says something like, oh, so you support genocide, do you? As though that is a justification for what has occurred in Melbourne, Australia. And just on that, by the way, even if there was a genocide, it would not be a justification to try and kill other people or hurt other people thousands of kilometres away. There is no genocide being committed by Jewish people or Israel anywhere. The genocide, the attempted genocide, is being committed by terrorists. If anyone in this country thinks this is just an attack on Jews and you can put your head in the sand and you can just quietly go about your business thinking, oh, I'm safe. My kids are safe. We're not Jewish. We're fine. Have you ever eaten in a Chinese restaurant or an Italian restaurant or a Mexican restaurant? You think the people in that restaurant were all Jewish, all Israeli? This violence, this absolute extremism that purports to be about humanity but is about the complete opposite does not stop with Jews, with Israelis. They don't care. They want to cause destruction. They want to kill. They want to bring this brand of terrorism here. It's already here. We determined as a country straight after October 7 that we would tolerate this kind of garbage, and it has just gotten worse. Yeah, there might have been a break here or there, a little bit of a quiet period. But when we have people in positions of power in this country repeating complete lies about what is happening in Gaza, repeating Hamas terrorist organization propaganda, then you wonder why idiots and psychopaths determine in their stupid, simple minds that it is justified to attack Jews and Israelis here. So this isn't the Australia I know. Well, this is the Australia now that I know. This is the Australia now. This is an Australia now that condones it, that accepts it, that stays quiet because they think it's not them, or they think that they're exempt, or they think that they're safe, or they think, oh, okay, it's just not worth it. People who do this kind of thing do not care about kids in Gaza, do not care about humanity. They care about destruction. They care about fear. They don't represent one thing that is meant to make Australia what it is. Not one thing. Yet the vast majority here seem to either stay silent, bury their head in the sand, or justify it by saying, yeah, but what about what's happening in Gaza? Well, what about what's happening in Gaza? There are hostages still there, live hostages there hundreds and hundreds of days later. There are terrorists there killing their own people. So yeah, care deeply about what's happening in Gaza. But don't support the terrorists that are carrying out the atrocities. And don't attack people in Melbourne, Australia on their behalf. So the Australia that we used to say we know and love, and that doesn't exist today. And what do we have to wait for that violent mob in the restaurant? To kill? Do we have to wait for that synagogue fire to erupt, to catch onto something, for something to explode, to kill children in there, for Australians to wake up and think, oh, maybe it's gone a little bit too far? Like, what does it take? What does it take for our leaders not to read propaganda and repeat it in front of the nation? When they are in positions of power and influence, they don't even fact check. They repeat propaganda that directly leads to this in our streets, in our restaurants, in our places of prayer. So I'm done with saying this isn't the Australia I know, because this is the Australia I know.